Hey there, welcome to Behind the Scenes. I'm Angela Wolf, and I missed you last week, but I'm happy to be back. And guess what? Wardrobe revamping. That's what I've been doing for the last, a couple days at least. So welcome, say hi if you've never been here before. I'm live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. And I can already see, I love it when I see you all roll in before me because I can read all your comments before I go live. So welcome, everyone. Hope you're doing a great day. Having a great day. I've been really working on like 8 projects today, so my mind is a little bit out there. So this is what we're doing today. I'll give you a little peek. There's some fabulous rayon fabric, and there's my Ruched-T Pattern. So I know many of you are in the Fashion Sewing Club, and in case you missed the last 2 live shows, the repeats are in the Fashion Sewing Club for you to watch. We are wardrobe revamping. That's all I can say. Because number one, when I left on my trip a couple of weeks, like a week and a half ago, I literally am going through my closet. I'm like, oh, I have nothing to wear. I sew clothes all the time, but it seems that I've got a one piece here and a one piece here, but they don't match. They don't go together. So I'm revamping my closet to make sure that every top has a match somewhere, if not 1, maybe 2 or 3, especially if we start traveling again. So as I'm going through the closet, and the Fashion Sewing Club, we had a lot of fun yesterday talking about colors, picking colors. I went through my closet last night and, I don't know, maybe 8 items. The color looks awful on me, but I love the fabric. So I got to either dye the outfit and turn it a different color or add something to it that is my color. So that's what we're doing in Fashion Sewing Club next week. So you don't want to miss that Zoom session. And don't worry, I will record it because I know a lot of you are on summer vacay. All right, I can see you. Hello. So I'm going to be using my Ruched-T Pattern to start this project. It's my go-to for everything. But as I was going to the closet and I was packing for a fishing trip coming up next month, I know I'm packing a little early. I just want to see if I had everything or what I needed to do. I was debating on making a bathing suit. And you know what? I never end up wearing a bathing suit when we're fishing. I'm always wearing like maybe a tank top, sportswear, athletic wear, and then usually I throw on like a little dress or something like that for dinner. So what I'm missing is a casual dress, like a rayon, nothing out of an ITY that's a little bit too hot for summer, but something out of a rayon, something casual, something that I could potentially throw over a bathing suit or just throw over after we're done fishing to go run and get lunch or something like that. So I'm going to make a little tank dress, racerback tank dress. And we're going to use the Ruched-T. So let me show you how to alter your pattern. And then I'm going to give you some tips for cutting knits. And as you all know, oh, I see it, guys. Our fabulous troll. Got it. Thank you. All right. Deleted. I know. Hey, Phil, it's great to see you. So I'm going to use a rayon knit on this. For those of you that have never sewn knits, I have a great knits masterclass that you can take. If you're on YouTube, you can actually see the video right below. But I'm going to give you enough tips for those of you that do know how to sew knits to get you started. Let's alter the pattern and cut her up. All right. I'm going to walk away from here. So if we end up with another buddy, let me know. And thanks to all of you. We did name our squirrels yesterday, the 2 babies that keep showing up at my door tapping for peanuts. Wynn almost fell off the couch laughing when I told him that the brother fans wanted to name them Chip and Dale. And he said they're going to have an identity crisis because that was for chipmunks. But you know what? Chip and Dale was way too cute. So now we have Chip and Dale. And I will make sure that they don't get in the house. I saw some of your comments yesterday and I was thinking, oh my gosh, if those little guys got in the house, it would be chaos. All right, let's go over to the pattern and start altering. Here we go. All right, and I can still see your comments. I will pop over back and take your questions too, okay? Oh, wait, you know what I forgot to tell you as I'm walking away? The first thing you have to do for this pattern is measure how long you want the dress. Now, if you've watched my live shows for a while, you might have seen me do this last year where we took a t-shirt and refashioned it. This is a little different because we're not going to add a waist seam. So it's going to be a fitted top, racerback style, and then almost not quite a half circle for the skirt, half circle skirt, but I want it to be full. So you need to measure from the back of your neck, the top of your neck, down, mark where your waist is. If you want this outfit to be fitted down to the waist area, so mine is 17 inches, 17 and a half, something like that. Let me double check that again. So I want this to be fitted down to 17 inches. Got to use the bigger side. All right, and I want my hem to go to just about my knee, so I'm measuring from my neck, analyzing where I want this to go, and we are at 38 inches. So 17 and 38 are my two numbers. So you have to measure from your neck to your waist, and then your neck all the way to your hem. Make sense? All right. Let's head on over to the pattern. 17 and 38 before I forget my numbers, right? Okay. Believe it or not, I'm still drinking hot tea today. I just love it. I can't help it. So 17 is going to be my marking. This is my back. And again, this is the Ruched-T. I wanted to use this one because I know almost like so many of you have this pattern. If you don't, it's the main one I use for everything. But that way you can just get started sewing with me right away. It is available in PDF and it's also available in paper. I just got the paper patterns back in stock. So I'll make sure I update the website for that. All right, so back of the neck down. So my waist is about 17. Looks like the Ruched-T here is about 15. Let me double check my measurements because I thought this fit me pretty darn good. I'll put my glasses on this time. No, 16 and a half. So I'm going to say this is my waist area. So I need 16. So I'm actually going to make this waist. This is, you can see this section here. That's where the waist gets narrower. I'm going to lower that. I'll just cut right across the middle here. I'm actually cutting the medium size out because I want this top to be a little looser, or this, I should say this tank dress. So here's one section. I'm just going to tape this up here, and then I can measure how much I need. I'm going to use the grid on here as a guide. Whatever I extend on the back, I need to extend on the front. Down just a little bit, and I will tape my front. So what I'm doing is I'm actually taping the paper, which is going to be the extension here, to the center front. And by using the grid as a guide, this paper is also the center front. It saves me in cutting. Okay, so there's the back. Here's the front. I'll do the front first since you can see that one on camera. And we measure this one more time. Actually, I'll do the back first because that's what I measured. 17 inches about. I think I said 16 and a half. So I'm going to slide this down 16 and a half. Now this includes a seam allowance on it. Don't forget the neckline has a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So if I go to 16 and a half, I'm really at 17. All right, now what have we added here? We've added two and 3/8 of an inch. There's two. 2 and 3/8 of an inch. All right, so now on this piece here, you just have to true up this line. Sharpie here. I always put extra paper underneath here before I use the Sharpie because I don't want to mess up my beautiful mats. Extend that. All right, that looks great. So I know that my waist now will fall in the correct location. And then I'll go ahead and cut this. So there is my back. And I'm going to put a note here. 17-inch waist. So I'll keep this pattern for later. And I'm also going to turn this into a racerback. And I'm also going to turn it into a dress, but we'll do that section in just a second. First, I'm going to do the waist, then the racerback. All right, so 2 3/8 of an inch I need to add to this. This is the front. I know I've got this huge yardstick. Just happens to be what I've got at the table right now, so it's going to have to work. It's not usually what I use to measure patterns, but hey, make it work. I've got quite a few things going on in the studio right now. My husband said I'm making multitasking working to the greatest extent, just catching up from being gone. You know, when you have these unexpected surprises in life, you just have to make it work, right? All right, so there's my front. I added 2 3/8 of an inch. And now we're going to true this line. You can use a curved ruler if you want. It curves in just a little bit. That's the waist. And by doing that, now when I sew these together, the front and the back should match perfectly. All right, so now let's go ahead and cut that off. And again, I'm going to mark this 17-inch waist. Waist height, not width. I'm barely, right? Racer back. Tank dress. All right, so our waist is good. Now we need to measure. Well, we're not going to do the dress quite yet. Let's go ahead and do the shoulders. This part is about the easiest thing that you'll ever have to do. There's the front. There's the back. Now you want to talk about easy peasy. This is definitely it. Slide this to make sure you can see it on camera. There you go. And yes, I am live. I'm not bringing your comments up right now because I'm over here, but feel free to ask your questions. All right. Racerback. I like to have my straps wide enough to cover up my racerback bra, or you could also put in like what you call like a shelf bra. I could make a second layer here, so then I don't have to wear a bra with it, but I'm going to leave enough shoulder space that I can actually add, I have room for a bra. So we're going to say you have a 1/2 inch seam allowance at the neckline, remember, and from there, you're going to be adding binding just like you would for the Ruched-T. For the armholes, there's a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And this was for adding sleeves. Now, I don't want to add sleeves, so I need to take away that 1/2 inch seam allowance. So the first thing I'll do is just mark that. And I'm just going to eyeball it with you because I'm pretty good at this. This is just taking away a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So everything I measure is going to be inside of that. Make sense? Just so you can see that. And I'll put a marking on this side too. This is approximate, but it gives me an idea. I'm going to be measuring from the neckline in out anyways, so we're fine there. All right. So we're going to have binding here and binding along the armholes for the racerback. Now, why am I taking away the 1/2 inch seam allowance if we're adding binding? Well, if I left this just like this and then sewed the binding right onto here, you would have binding going all the way up into your armpit and way over to the edge of your shoulder. The idea of this being the seam allowance is once you added the sleeve, your shoulder seam would really be to here. If I add binding to this, then all of a sudden I sent my shoulder seam out to there. Does that make sense? All right. So why don't we give ourselves, we have a 1/2 inch seam allowance at the front neckline, which would bring you to here. And why don't we make a 2-inch shoulder strap area, which is right here. So you're probably wondering, well, why did I still mark that? Well, when I start to draw my racer back, I want to make sure that I don't have it end right to this point, or else all of a sudden your binding again will be going into your armpit. So if that's 2 inches, then on this side, I need to do the same. So here is my 1/2 inch seam allowance marking. Again, this is for the missus size because I want it to be just a little bit bigger. And 2 inch, well, basically I went up 1 size from what I normally wear, in case you're wondering what difference does it make. You could also just alter the pattern for that too, but so there's 2 inches and 2 inches, and that's going to be how wide my shoulder strap is going to be. All right, racerback styles typically go in and then come back out. So just to make sure it's nice and straight, I'm grabbing my curved ruler here. Let's see. So it's going to look something like this when we're finished. Just give myself some markings here. Go in. And then back out. And I want this to end, I'm going to say 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch below where I took that seam allowance off. Because once you add the 1/2 inch binding back, remember, you're going to have that. And I want this racer back. I don't want it super tight under my armpit. So why don't we take this down 1 inch. That's a nice even number. Now, whatever I take down here, I have to do to the front side too. So these are just some guide markings for me. And then I can take my ruler and make it a nice smooth curve. Let's see. I do have a ruler like this, if it's not the same one on my Amazon page, if you're looking. I added a few more items on there recently, by the way. What else do you do when you travel? Go shopping. Let's see. I think it's going to, the curve is going to match just a little bit better if I go like this. There we go. Okay, so this is my new marking. Now, if I want a 2-inch finished, I need to add a 1/2 inch seam allowance, right? So I'm just going to use this. Use a seam gauge if you want to be really precise. Mine's over at the ironing board. So this is going to have to work. Okay. So now we've added our seam allowance, 1/2 inch. Okay, any questions on that? Now I'm just going to cut that away. And that looks great for a racerback. All right, now let's go ahead and do the front. Slide this over just a little bit. Now the front is a little bit different. You don't want to go in and out because you might have a little bit of flasheroo going on. So here, again, I'm going to mark down. Let's see, what did we mark down? 1 inch. Yeah, making sure that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure it was 1 inch from the top. Actually, no. It was 1 inch from here. Oh, which one? Was it from the top or was it from where we cut that away? And that would be correct, because once you have this, all I know is that my ending has to go here once I have the 1/2 inch seam allowance. That's why I always keep my pattern pieces. So there we go. And then this is going to come up, around, and finish up here. So I'm going to just give myself some markings. Now look at the difference for the front. The back came all the way in and out. That's for the racerback style. And this kind of just came down and curved to the armhole. Now this here, by the way, this is with the seam allowance. So do you see what I did wrong? This marking here should be over 1/2 inch. So if I'm drawing this from my seam allowance, I need to make sure that I do that on both sides. So for the original seam, it would look, when it's finished, it's going to look more like this. And now cutting with the 1/2 inch seam allowance is going to look more like that. All these markings, right? I'm not used to explaining as I do this. I usually just cut it and go. There. And that's a nice line for the front. So it should cover pretty much everything I want to cover. All right, now what do we do? Well, you're going to want to measure all the way around here, plus this section here, and multiply. This plus this is going to be one of your bindings, and you'll need to cut 2 of those. What I usually do is cut at the end of my fabric. I'll cut 2-inch rows. You'll see as I cut my fabric. So I'm not even going to measure that right now. I just cut 2-inch strips and make them work. And then you'd also need 1 for here. So you got 1, 2, 3 sections where you're going to need binding. And I cut my binding 2 inches wide, which will give me a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I'll still end up with a nice binding. All right, so for the front, because this is me, this is my dress, I need to add a full bust adjustment here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. So I'm just going to cut up on the center front. And then up to the arm side. This doesn't have a dart, so I can't move darts around. And I'll cut right over to the bust area. If you haven't seen me do this before, I have a ton of videos on this. And Fashion Sewing Club, you've got a ton of videos on it too. So what I'm doing is I open this up to give myself a little more room in the bust. And I don't want this wide open area. I know I'm making a dress, but I want it to fit in the waist just like I had it before I put that on there. So now I'm going to slide this back over. And there we go. Now, what do you notice when I did that? I gave myself more room in the bust area, but I also, this is a little bit shorter now, so I have to make sure that these lengths match. For me, I'm just going to put this together because I'm going to be changing all that at the bottom anyways. All right. Put a piece of paper under here. How do you know how much room you need? Well, it depends on your measurements, by the way. So I know I want about 1 inch extra, and this will give me just about a 1/2 inch here, and then when you add that to both sides, it gives me about 1 inch. All right. So now I'll cut this out of the way. I don't need all this excess paper. It was just to fill in that little gap there. And then I'll tape this back together because see, once I did this and I made that extra slash, I gave myself extra room. And now the bottom section is back where it's supposed to be. So the only thing different here is that the center front's a little bit shorter. If I want the entire pattern to be a little longer. I'll change it, but for now, this is going to be great. I'm just going to cut this off so it's even at the bottom because we're going to be adding a dress to it anyways. Okay, yes, that might not be a conventional way of doing this, but it works every time. And what you notice is on the side seam, now this comes out a little bit and then back in. Okay, now we said we know where the waist is, which is here now, on here. And then the back, there's the waist. I know my side seams will match up. Even though this came out a little bit, that's why this side ended up a little shorter, because we made a little extra room right here. Does that make sense? Okay, 38 inches, I believe, was from the back to where I want the bottom of my skirt. Now this Ruched-T, by the way, has 4 inches extra in the hem because usually it's ruched, but I'm not going to be ruching it. So I'll measure from the top of the neckline down. This takes me to 32. So I just need 6 more inches added to this. Now I can just mark on here, I want 6 more inches. Plus 6 inches down. Plus 6 inches plus a seam allowance. You'll see when I make this skirt section, I will just use my yardstick to measure 6 inches down from this point. As this is going to all be spread out like a semicircle. So on the front, I need to write the same thing. Plus 6 inches plus seam allowance. And I'll just give myself a 1-inch seam allowance on both sides for the hem. It gives me plenty of room just in case I didn't measure accurately. All right, now this is where the fun begins. So let's go ahead and start with the back piece. You don't need to see the upper part. We're going to start here at the waist section. So 17 inches down is where my waist falls. That is right. We're just going to use this bottom line as this marking right here. Okay. I'll draw it in so you can see that. This is the waist. I'm going to cut across here. We'll reattach it, don't worry. Cut right to the edge, but not through. Because I want to keep this as my side seam, which will match up to the front. Okay. So what happens, I'm going to lift up the front out of the way. When I slide, you know what I'll do is I'll line this front up with this line right here so you understand what's happening. So here, it used to be like this where the center front fold. If I slide this out, this is turning into what we call a semicircle of a dress, right? So I'm just going to unattach this. I unattached at the waist. We'll be taping that back in there, but now you can kind of see what I'm doing. From this point, just slash from the hem up. And you can give yourself 2, 3, 4 slashes. It doesn't matter. It just makes it easier to even this out at the bottom. See, when we spread this, so I'm going to go ahead and just every few inches give myself a little slash. All right, so this is the waist area. If I spread this out, what am I coming out with? Making it a little fuller at the bottom. Of course, we still need to add 6 inches to the bottom of this. So let's go ahead and spread this as far as we think that we want it. So here's my front. If you had a full half circle skirt, this section here would be all the way out to here. I don't want it to be quite that much. I just want more room for a flowy skirt. So let's go ahead. You need to still cut the front on the center fold, unless you decide to have a seam down the front, which I don't want. And this side seam, this section here needs to be exactly where I cut it off from. So if I were to spread this out, what do you see? If I were to lift this up and reattach it, then my side seam would be too short. So no matter what I do, this section here needs to match. So let's go ahead and slide that out a little bit. Now it's going to make the skirt a little bit longer, but again, you can cut it off after you're finished if you want. And no, I don't have a magical way to make that magic for you. Spread this apart. I'll add a piece of paper underneath here in just a second to make this wider. Now, by the way, I could cut this separately and just reattach it. If you want something really full, that's what I would recommend, because it does get a little weird when your seam kind of just angles out like that. I'm just going to start here, kind of just finagling this until I like the look of it. Slide this paper in. And I'm going to line this the front of the paper up right where I need to add the skirt back in. That looks pretty good. Again, making sure this side piece matches up. If not, what you'll do is you'll just redraw this to make sure it's a nice true line together. All right, not too shabby. Now this did give me a little bit more length in the center front. That's all right, because you want your hem, if you look down at the hem area, I'll bring this up so you can see it. See how this comes out on a curve? That's what you want. And you'll end up hemming this when you're finished anyway. So now for the side seam here, I want to make sure this is a nice trued line. Truing means that I don't have a point that has a nice curve to it. So I'm just going to cut, make sure this is a nice transition. Does that make sense? One more thing on the Ruched-T, because this comes in and back down, I could technically cut this as a straight line going out. And if I decide to do that, to make sure that your side seams match up, the proper way to do that would be to give yourself a few little slashes here and make sure this is a straight line. So here, I'll just give myself, slash all the way to the outside, just a few of them along the curve. Go ahead and take your yardstick, and that's how you can make sure that this is nice and straight. See how this curves in before I slash that? Now this will go out a little bit, and that's a much nicer angle for a skirt. All right, you can also use the edge of your paper too to line this up. The reason I did the slashing is because then I still know this is going to match up. If I eyeball it, then the front might end up a little bit shorter than the back, or vice versa. So let's line up the paper and make sure the seam is nice and straight. And it's just barely, just a little, like 1/8 of an inch that each of these are opened. This one's like only 1/16 of an inch. But now I know that's a straight seam. All right, let's see how that looks. Not bad. You can add paper underneath here if you want this pattern to lay flat. Again, don't forget to add your 6 inches to your hem. You can do it with paper now or do it later. It's totally up to you. So if I know I'm going to add 6 inches to this, I could just add the paper. But an easy way to do this is once I get to the cutting board is 6 inches, 6 inches, 6 inches, 6 inches, 6 inches. I'm going to add paper to the bottom to give myself a guide to draw on though. Otherwise, you really don't know where you're adding 6 inches to, right? Talk about a crooked hem. Okay. Now we need to true this hemline. Make it a nice curve. Make sure it's even. Your hemline for a dress is usually always curved just a little bit. After I drew that, I see that area there was just a little bit off. So I'm going to use my cut line instead. Now, if you didn't have enough markings to know where to put that hem, I could have slashed this one up a little bit more and spread it out, and then I would have known the bottom of it. All right, so there's one. Now, this is the back. If for any reason you have a little bit of a fuller tush, a full tush, you might want to add a center back seam, and that way you can spread this center back out a little bit, which gives you a little more room to go over the tush. All right, so there is the back. That looks great. And for the front, I can measure how much I spread this out if I want it to be exactly even, or eyeball it. So I'm pretty sure you know what I'm going to do. There's the front. I'm going to move this pattern piece over to the fabric. All right, now before I move to the front, do you have any questions? I want to make sure I grab all these. Okay, let's see. Tess, how do you make copies of the pattern? Well, if you have the PDF, you can print it as many times as you want. I actually have a plotter, so I just make extra patterns. Now, you can, if you already have the Ruched-T pattern and you want the full sheet printed, you can email me and just pay the minimal fee for the paper pattern if you already have the booklet. You can also take it to a store. You can also take your original pattern. I know a lot of you, I think Melody's on here. I'm pretty sure Melody does this. Traces your original pattern onto tissue paper or another paper. And that way, that's how you keep using that same pattern over and over. That's an idea for you, Tessa. Arnell, yes. And this is actually a whole separate pattern I'm just using for this. Oh, thanks, Mary. I told you I was multitasking today. So that was the back. Thanks for noticing. Thanks, Yvette. Oh, Cindy left. I have to tell you, Cindy sent me the most beautiful gift. I'm sorry that I missed her to say thank you. Oh, you're welcome, Camilla. I always have a few little quick hacks like that. Something fun. All right, anything else? Vicki, do you remove the seam allowance for binding? So I removed the seam allowance originally because I didn't want this. When I have sleeves, my armhole goes right into my armpit. So that with binding would actually put my shoulder way out here. So I took that off first, then took away an inch. So I know so I basically took 1.5 inches away from my pattern. Mary, it's totally, everybody wears their bras different. Now, this is a racerback style, which are usually closer to your neck and angle in. So that's why I did that. You could also add a separate piece of fabric there and make a shelf bra, which is, I have a ton of tank tops like that. Oh, thanks, Shannon, for letting me know. You're right, Susan. All right, I think I got everything. Make sure I didn't miss any other questions. But just less. What were you talking about, Deborah? if I want to make it into a straight dress instead of the flare, it would still need to be a bit wider circumference from the bottom of the t-shirt. Absolutely, because the ruched tees fitted at the bottom, so you need a little bit of room so you can walk. Now, by the way, one of the styles right now are from the 80s that we used to always wear, which the t-shirt dresses were really fitted in the where you're walking. In fact, they were really fitted. I used to wear 2 layers just so you couldn't see through them. Kind of a cool look, but I was also like 16, so I want this to be a little flare because it's also going to be warm. I'm taking in mind the temperature I'm going to be wearing it in, where I'm going to be wearing it. I could wear this to the grocery store, to wherever, groceries, you name it. Lunch. Oh, Amy, that's a good idea on wax. Do you have to do the same slashing to the back of the skirt? Yeah, the front and the back. And since I called that one the front, it was really the back. I'm going to do the exact same thing to the front. All right. Got it. All right, let's go back over. Oh, you can see the fabric I'm going to use. Isn't that luscious? Ooh, yes. So I was going to use a piece that I was going to hand dye, but we're going to do that next week on Fashion Sewing Club. So back here to the pattern. Oh my gosh, I can't believe our hours are already almost up. All right, so same thing here. Now this one's a little different, remember, because the center front is here, 17 inches down from the back, but this got raised because of my full bust adjustment. So I'm actually going to use this lower line here for my waist. Actually, I take that back. I'm going to use this line so then my side seams will match up. Sometimes I have to think these out as I go. All right. Again, you can see the hinge. I can go as wide as I want to on this. I could just leave this attached too, by the way. Here, I'll give you another way to do this. I kind of explained it in the last section for the back piece. This is the front piece. Give myself a few slashes. I'll give myself a few more for this one to explain how to get your hem a little bit more even. And let's just go one more. And while I'm here at this side piece, why don't I go ahead and give this a few slashes so I can make it straight. So remember, this is the piece that I want to make sure this is nice and straight. I just have to spread this out just a little bit. Okay. Slide that out. Got all these little pieces here. And I want to kind of compare the front and the back to make sure that they're spread out just about the same. And you can do that by just grabbing your other piece and laying it on top. Or you could measure whatever you want. I'm using this grid as a guide to make sure this matches in the center front. This is going to be a super cute skirt dress. Okay, so if this is my center front for the back, I didn't quite spread it quite that much. It's about right there. And for my front, looks like I needed to add this much, it's almost exactly the same to the front and the back. Yes, will that make it just a little bit longer in the center back? Yes, it will. But you're going to be amazed that once you try this on, the way it hangs is beautiful. You can always shorten it a little bit more, but everybody's body shape is different. Remember, when I used to do alterations, depending on your body shape, the skirt might hang lower in the front than in the back. So this will totally depend on your body, and then you can adjust accordingly. All right. See if I can slide this paper in here without moving the whole pattern. No such luck, but we're pretty close. I like using the edge of paper for this because it's straight, right? And if you're trying to match everything up, I know that this center front is going to be a straight seam. So this will be cut on the fold just like it normally is, unless you decide to add a seam. And again, this is the front piece, and I know I screwed up and said it was the front on the last one, but if you didn't figure that out, you have the wolf pack here to fill you in. All right, slide this up just a little bit. And this time, I'm not even going to draw this in, I'm going to just cut. Make sure this all lays up correctly. Looks like I need one more little piece here. Well, I'll draw just so you can see. So I know that I need to add 6 inches to this. Just give yourself a few more pieces of paper here. Now I'm just using standard center paper from my printer. You could use extra pieces from the pattern that you cut out. That'd be fine too. All right, 6 inches down, plus a 1 inch hem. So now on the other one, I just cut it and reminded myself to add 6 inches. For this one, I'm just go ahead and just do both at the same time. Just for those of you that have a little hard time with just eyeballing it and get a little nervous about that. Let's see, and 7 inches here. And this line here should be straight, so I should be able to just draw that out. And now, so this is the 6 inches plus my 1 inch seam allowance. I'm just going across my guidelines here. Make sure that's a nice curve. And then here on the side seam. So this one I added the full section. The other one I'm just going to use the yardstick. But for those of you that I know like to see every detail, there you go. So this is a nice curve. You can see my pattern alterations here. And my side seam should match. It should fit perfectly to the back side. All right, let's take a quick look at the fabric. All right, any more questions before I give you a few tips for the fabric? Hi, Arlene. I'm cutting it all up, by the way. Marcia, you don't take the bust adjustment out of the back. The bust adjustment's only for the front. And that's why it ended up being a little shorter at the waist area, because you added more width to the front. You don't need to add a full bust to the back. You can if you want to, but you don't need it. And it will still line up with your side seam just fine. Hi, Zena. Glad you made it. Hi, Lizandra. I know I love pattern hacks. Yes, you could put a slit in the side. Actually, when I was gone last week, I had to go, I had one cute skirt and a top to wear for the funeral, but for the visitation the night before, I had nothing. I went to Banana Republic, and believe it or not, I spent $100 on a dress that Wynn told me I should probably get rid of. It was cute, but it was not me, he said. So I think I'm going to be dyeing it or cutting it up or making it. But it was like straight, and it had little slits in the side. It's very cute, I thought. But it's hard to find just a black dress that had nothing on it. Okay. Oh, Amy, y'all do good at this. All right, let's go look quickly at the fabric. We got just like 4 minutes left here. And I'm going to give you some tips. I got to run all the way back here. Sorry about that. This is my other cutting section. So what I mentioned about the binding is that I will just cut strips for the binding. This is a rayon knit. It has a lightweight stretch. So a lot of you bought this fabric. I'm out of it now, but all right, let's see. I'm actually going to cut this way on this side. I'm folding my fabric in half, making sure that the grain line's matched up. You can kind of tell that by just giving your fabric a little fold, and you'll see, if you fold it, you'll see little wrinkles here if it's not lined up. So it's not quite lined up right. Get rid of those little wrinkles. And again, for those of you that are new to sewing knits, I have the Essential Guide to Sewing Knits on my website that you might like. All right, now there's no wrinkles here. Slide this down. My camera might be a little low, but you'll be able to see once I get there. All right, so this end down here is not totally straight. These are my rulers. I'm going to use this as a guide because it will hold both layers down. And now the edge will be even. This is the 2-inch ruler. So I know I'm going to need 2 armholes, and I can probably get an armhole out of each width. So this will be, if I cut this on the fold, that'll be 2 armholes. This has rubber on the back, by the way, so it just sticks right to the fabric. And hopefully I'm cutting straight. I'm kind of leaning over in a very awkward position. All right, there's 1 strip. And then I need 1 more 2-inch strip for my neckline. And by just cutting this off the bottom first, it just makes it so much faster and easier. Because next, then I'll just lay this out to cut my pattern. All right. Try to lean that over just a little bit for you to give you an idea of how this is going to work. So I had to flip one side over to cut it on the fold. I'll try to conserve fabric, so I'll move this over, the fold over a little bit, but I will cut one on the fold. And then because it's a print, I will make sure that I cut the other one facing the same direction. And the only other thing you want to make sure is, this has some big flowers. I want to make sure the placement of the bust is not like right there or right there. So if I move this over a little bit, this might be more the center of my dress. Make sense? It's a print. And the other thing is, as I go to cut the next piece out for the back, if it's possible, I can pay attention to where these bigger flowers are and make sure that the back is matched up very close to that. All right, I'm coming back to you. So the print is really important. I wanted this print because it's a rayon print. A lot of you bought this fabric for me, and it had, when I was unbolting, towards the end, it had a big hole in the center. So, of course, I had to keep like 3 yards for myself. I Couldn't decide what to make. I think there's enough for this tank dress, and I think there's also enough for a tank, which would look great under a sweater. So I think I've got lip gloss all over my glasses. All right, guys, we only have a few minutes left. A couple reminders for you. Fashion Sewing Club next week. We're going to be hand dyeing fabrics. It's just going to be a easy, fun tutorial. Nothing in depth like on pattern review if you want more. My knits class, of course, you can take. And those of you that want to join for Road to California 2023, the classes are up on their website and they open, I believe, this weekend. I thought it was June 24th or June 22nd. So today or Friday, one or the other. So my classes are really limited in size because you're going to be using some awesome Brother Luminaire machines, a lot of embroidery. There's going to be embroidery, construction, and also, of course, a few surprises in the class. So if you want in, don't delay. That's for January. Can't believe we're talking about 2023. Hey, Peg, great to see you. I think so too, Arnell. Thank you for your beautiful card too. All right, I thought it was pretty good fabric. Marcia, I would have a mess. Just watch where the flowers go. That's the most important. All right, guys, any more questions for me? If you need to find me, go to angelawolf.com. I'm pretty much caught up on emails. I was a little behind while I was gone, but I think we're back on track. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything else. Hand dyeing is always a yes. Of course. Yeah, Vicki, I did. Vicki, I showed the binding in the Fashion Sewing Club if you search for binding, and it's also in the knits class. You're welcome, Tessa. Great to see you. All right, everyone. It's so great to see you all. I hope you have a great weekend. We're fishing in a tournament, so I've got my lucky hat here. I've got my lucky lures. So thank you, Dara. And hopefully we catch some fish. All right, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.